Chapter 1: The Geopolitical Reality of the Territorial Question. In war, sometimes guns and bullets are not everything. A bullet can end a life, but a word can shape the fate of a nation. The recent statement by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky that he is ready to discuss territory with Russian President Vladimir Putin has caused a stir around the world. In fact, the territorial issue between Ukraine and Russia is not a story of a day or two. It originated centuries ago, when the borders of Eastern Europe were always as volatile as the waves of the sea. If you open a regional defense map, you will see lands like Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, or Zaporizhia, which are not only home to millions of people, but also the key to controlling the Black Sea and strategic corridors. In the strategic world, there is a familiar saying: whoever controls Crimea controls the Black Sea. Russia understands that, Ukraine understands it, and NATO countries understand it even better. Therefore, Mr. Zelensky's sudden signal of readiness to discuss territory is no different than a plot twist in the long-running series, The Ukrainian War. The underlying cause. First, Ukraine is facing enormous pressure both militarily and economically. On one hand, the Russian army, with its superior firepower, continuously increases pressure on the Kremenski, Donetsk, and Kharkiv fronts. On the other hand, Ukraine's economy is exhausted, and Western aid is gradually slowing down as many countries are preoccupied with internal issues. Second, international public opinion is also changing. Many countries are beginning to view the Ukraine conflict as a luxury war that costs huge financial resources. Many European parliamentarians frankly asked the question, is it worth continuing to pour unlimited money into an endless war? Thirdly, internally, Zelensky needs to prove that he is a flexible leader who knows how to listen and is willing to find solutions. If he insists on fighting to the end, he may face the risk of losing the trust of a people who are already exhausted after more than 3 years of war. A humorous but realistic illustration. If we compare the situation to a football match, Ukraine is 3-0 down. The team is losing strength, and the fans, the West, are starting to get sleepy and leave. In that context, the coach, Zelensky, is forced to find a new tactic to at least prolong the match or even find an honorable goal. And territorial compromise is the last free kick that he hopes can turn the situation around. Chapter 2: Reaction from Russia and the international community. Immediately after Zelensky's statement, Russia responded quite calmly, but with hidden meanings. Moscow has long maintained that the annexed territories are Russia's forever. On the negotiating table, Russia almost has the advantage because they control the ground. If you look at the current defense map, Russia still holds Crimea, most of Donetsk, Luhansk, and many areas in Kherson. This means that any discussion will take place on the basis of Russia has, Ukraine loses. It is a game where the first mover always wins. Reaction from Western countries. The European Union and the United States are in a difficult position. On one hand, they don't want Ukraine to cede land because that would be considered a defeat to Russia. But on the other hand, they also want to find a way out to avoid prolonging the war of attrition. Western media quickly ran the headline, "Ukraine opens the door to negotiations with Putin." Westerners were both happy and worried. Happy because they could soon be free from the taxes that feed war mentality. Worried because if Zelensky made concessions, it could set a dangerous precedent. Other powers would think that borders could be changed by force. Ukrainian psychology. Imagine living in Kharkiv, where for the past 3 years, sirens have been blaring, children study in basements, and the elderly have been crowded on the subway. If you heard that the leader was willing to discuss territory in exchange for peace, you might breathe a sigh of relief. At least we're still alive. But some people would be indignant. Why negotiate the land our ancestors left us? This divided mentality has led to Zelensky taking a huge political gamble. One wrong move and he could lose his presidency. But if he succeeds, he could go down in history as the man who dared to sacrifice a part of himself to save the whole country. Funny but bitter. Many experts have commented that the situation is similar to a family whose house has had their living room taken over by a neighbor. After years of litigation, fighting, and exhaustion, the homeowner says, "Okay, now let's sit down and discuss how to divide the rooms in peace." The story sounds funny, but it actually reflects what is happening. Chapter 3: Meaning, Consequences, and Future Scenarios. Zelensky's statement is more than just a statement. It opens up a series of big questions. If the negotiations are successful, what will happen to Ukraine's borders? Will Ukraine keep Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, but lose Crimea and Donbass forever? If the negotiations fail, will the war escalate? Russia may see this as a sign of Ukraine's weakness and increase its attacks. International significance. If Ukraine accepts the loss of territory, the post-Cold War world order will be shaken. The national border, which was considered inviolable, will become fragile. Defense map and future scenarios. According to the current map, Russia has a land corridor connecting the border through Donbass to Crimea, an extremely important strategic line. If Ukraine agrees to tacitly acknowledge it, Russia will consolidate its position as a regional superpower. Meanwhile, Ukraine can focus on rebuilding the remaining territory, applying to join the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Historical significance. In history, there have been many leaders who have had to accept land concessions for peace. For example, the Munich Agreement in 1938, when Europe agreed to let Hitler take the Sudetenland. The consequences are well known. War still broke out. Will that scenario repeat itself in Ukraine? This is the question that makes the whole world ponder. The end. A call to action. The war in Ukraine has not ended yet, but President Zelensky's statement has opened a new page, full of controversy and drama. It's like a chess game where just one move can decide the whole board. We, the observers, may not hold guns, but understanding the nature, analyzing the causes and results will help the world learn lessons. Because war is not just a matter of two countries, but a common lesson for humanity. If you find this content useful, please like, share, and subscribe to History and War channel so that we can continue to bring the most in-depth, accurate, and unique analysis of history and war in the world.